Hey everyone, and welcome back to Hack and Hustle. I'm Anthony Johnson.
And I'm Brad Rager. And joining us today is my friend Jonathan Sabatini. Jonathan has been a longtime seller and sales leader on the channel side of cybersecurity and is currently CRO at Consortium Networks. John and I recently caught up on what he's building over at Consortium, and it struck with me that so much about what they are doing internally has lessons and implications for what they do externally, which is building trust with customers. Because at the end of the day, that's what a VAR does. So I thought it'd be great to have Jonathan on the show and share some of his hard-won learnings on building culture and building trust. Jonathan, welcome to Hack and Hustle. Great to have you here, man.
Hey, thanks for the invite, guys. It's great to be here.
Cool. So I know you guys are both Atlantic Coast folks, and I think you may have met before. I don't know. Jonathan, you ever sell AJ anything in your long career?
I can't say I've had the privilege personally, but we've got a few mutuals that keep us pretty closely connected.
Nice. And hey, I was looking at your LinkedIn and I didn't realize you started back in the day as a recruiter and I kind of went the opposite direction. So I'm wondering what you learned a long time ago that my dumb ass has not apparently learned.
You might be the smart one, man. I mean, when you put it like that, and I look at you, maybe they kicked me out. Maybe it's the other way around. But yes, that is definitely where I cut my teeth and learned a lot, right? Learned a lot about people and sort of that art of building trust and the importance of keeping people at the forefront, for sure.
I would say both are all about people, right? At the end of the day.
I saw this interesting fact research thing where they had a group of people who were really well liked, and they had a group of people who were really high IQ, really smart people. And after 20 years, they tracked them. The people who were well liked made a lot more money than the people who were really smart. So I love this topic because, there's the notion of VAR. Everyone's always wondering what does a V mean? Right? Because it's supposed to be value. But is it? And I think that when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to resellers, there are few organizations that actually add that value, right? So going into that, we talk a lot about, selling into cyber, building trust. How do you think about it? What's particularly relevant for VARs, and how do you think about what trust means? Because you've seen the gambit, and before this, we were talking a little bit about some history, and not everyone's all about trust. So what does it really mean to you, and how does somebody go about that?
No, fair question. And that value term, right, I think has been stretched pretty thin over the years, just with the evolution of the market. But, trust, I don't know, one of the most, if not the most critical elements of success in any kind of business relationship. Then you add cyber to it, right? And it becomes even more important. I think it's kind of funny because we spend, as an industry, so much time talking about speeds and feeds and widgets and capabilities. But at the end of the day, it's the people that make the difference, right? And particularly in the channel, I would say, as it relates to trust, you've got this dynamic in relationship where the end user, the client, right? You've been in this position, AJ, where you're at sometimes staking your career on choices, on decisions, right? And basing them on an individual or a company's word, right? Them telling you they can deliver. If you remove trust from that equation, I mean, what are you doing? That's your livelihood. That's your career at stake.
Yeah. No, it's true. I guess, what does it look like if we take both sides of the coin? What does it look like when it's bad, and what does it look like when it's good? Right? Almost like what does it feel like, right? What are your thoughts on that on that question?
Yeah, I think let's start with good, right? That's a little bit more appealing, and then we can bash on the bad maybe afterward. But I think the best folks are viewed as an extension of your team, right? As the end user's team, they're viewed as one of their own, part of the crew, maybe badged if it makes sense this day and age. But that trust isn't even a question, right? Because that person spent however much time needed prioritizing the client's success over their own needs, right? Over their own goals and objectives, whether they're financial or intangible by any stretch. A lot of that's easier said than done, right? Especially when everybody works for money. But the ones who truly understand that and practice it, you don't really need to explain it because they're fundamentally always present in the business and they're operating on a different level than the rest of them. The bad ones, I mean, you could probably describe this better than me in a lot of cases from your previous roles, but the bad ones are on the outside looking in. Maybe they get an at bat, maybe they get a pitch, but they haven't taken the time to understand your business. They haven't figured out what truly matters to you, success criteria, what your next 3 to 5 years look like in terms of objectives and where you want to take the business. And for that, you're probably not doing business with those folks if you don't have to.
What are the things that the best reps do that you see build that trust over time? Like, what does that look like practically on the ground day to day? Are there things that you've seen that have been really meaningful or impactful where a buyer says, he's my guy. After that, he's my guy or lady?
Going back to some of those, the great reps and that criteria, right? Becoming the extension of the team. It just takes a little bit of hard work and the right moral compass, right? It's aligning yourself to somebody else's objectives, to somebody else's goals and not your own. And in a lot of cases, sacrificing your own where needed to ensure they're successful because you're prioritizing that long-term partnership over, I don't know, a short-term buck or gain, right? Those folks are spending their days learning and educating themselves to align properly with that business, with the end user. And when they're not in front of the client, they're out there grinding on behalf of the client, right? Making sure they're getting the best possible support, price, ongoing intimate type of relationship with that supplier or vendor, and making sure that for years to come, they're in the best possible position. The whole place isn't going to come crashing down when they walk out the door.
My equation was always relationships get built on the back of the building of trust, and then deals come from relationships. And you can't really flip that equation as much as you would like to.
Can I ask, I just want to ask a follow-on question because it's been interesting for sellers, I think. When COVID happened, everybody stopped the in-person thing, right? Now we can look back and be like, man, that was years ago. Yes, but there were some behaviors that changed, and there are still sellers today. And there were definitely some post-COVID right away who were like, I don't visit clients in person anymore, right? And what my advice to them was like, well, your competitor will, and that handshake's going to close the deal. So is it possible to build as much trust without that personal interaction? Like, do salespeople still need to get out there and meet people face to face, or can they really do everything remote, right? What do you think?
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? I think, to Brad's point in the equation of trust leading into a relationship and one not really existing without the other, it's pretty hard to build a real relationship, over a camera or just over the phone. Is it possible? Sure. But in order to really establish trust, to build a bond, I mean, you got to get to know somebody, right? You've got to be with them in person. And I'm a big believer in being in front of people as much as possible. I think we've designed a lot of our setup over here to ensure that the entire company can be in front of partners, in front of clients as much as humanly possible, because, that's where the trust and relationships really come together.
Let's talk a little bit more about what you're building over there. I've been following on LinkedIn. I've seen a lot of good people that I know heading over your way, which is awesome. What's kind of the motivating philosophy behind how you're building the team, Jonathan?
Yeah. So look, I'm super fortunate, right? I walked into an amazing company. I can't and won't take any credit for the build per se, right? This place existed long before I showed up. In reality, I'm just the the guy standing over the fire that was already roaring with a gas can, right? The philosophy, simply put, is like, we have a client for life mentality. We value the long game, the long-term relationship over near-term profits. This entire company, including the back office, receives customer service training from the Ritz-Carlton. We practice what we preach, right? It's not just a slideshow that says, hey, we can do all these things for you, and then you get a totally different experience. We live and breathe it.
So how does that translate to the internal culture of how you guys work together? Because I think that's a big piece of where, sometimes you it's almost like you walk into a house, and if like the parents are fighting, you can feel the tension, and like you go to work with a vendor or a partner, and customer success and sales are fighting. You're like, okay, I'm just in the middle here. I just want to buy my thing and get out of here, guys. Right? Like how does that translate to the culture inside of for you guys?
Yeah, we've all been in those scenarios, right? I think going back to some of the things we all subscribe to here, again, everybody doing the same sort of training, and then I go back to sort of the design structure, right? We're very agile, not just because of our size, but the way we're set up organizationally, so that we can maximize field time from every business unit, right? And being sort of flat in that regard eliminates silos, eliminates middle management and things that are you see as those barriers that exist within companies, and can lead into that conflict or friction that you see between different departments that, when all working in harmony, make the best companies the most successful, right? So a big goal of ours is to keep that unification and all of us rowing in the same direction. Yeah, I think at the foundation, Consortium at inception, right, was actually never intended to be a reseller. It was founded with the goal of facilitating conversations and best practices in the industry for CISOs, to ensure CISO success. Hence the name, Consortium Networks. Again, none of that I will take any credit for. I'm just the guy with the gas can, but we have no intention of changing any of that. It's just scaling it.
Let's talk about scaling, because I think it can be really hard to hold on to a culture as you're growing quickly. What's your approach to hiring? Like, how do you gauge whether somebody is going to be additive or subtractive from the culture as you're hiring folks? Like, how do you think about that intersection of scaling and culture?
Yeah, so we keep a lot of people involved in the hiring process. Fortunately, we've partnered with a really amazing talent acquisition firm. They spent, I don't know, 3 to 4, maybe even upwards of 5 weeks just learning the nuts and bolts of the company and interviewing existing employees prior to even engaging in launch and search and those sorts of things. And they helped us build this sort of golden image of what we call like an ICP, right? Like the ideal candidate profile. We've kept that as our golden image or our blueprint, and we stick to it. So we even if there's a shiny object or a distraction, if they don't meet the, call it like internal and external criteria that we're looking for, we move on. Nothing against that person, but we need it to be a match both ways to ensure our success and the client's success. If those things don't link up, then we do our best to try and vet that pretty quickly. And then through the interview process, I don't know, I like to go with the sort of eyes wide open mentality. I want people coming into the organization on day one to feel like they've been here for a week or two. Not that they're just trying to meet the first person for the first time, that they're 10 or 15 people they already know, even if they didn't know them from prior lives. So I think we do a nice job of not waterboarding candidates, with too many interviews, but giving them many different views and introductions to people that are here today.
What are the most important things you're looking for?
Well, now you're going into my golden image a little bit. I don't know if I'm giving away all my secrets, right? You look at sort of top success criteria. Luckily for cyber today, in the community, reputations are kind of built and stuck with people for better or worse throughout their career. So where we can lean onto those things and look for historicals, where success has been found and how it was done. Just because someone was a high performer, at company X doesn't mean they're going to be a high performer here. Nothing against them or us. It's just, again, we have to make the internal and external profiles fit. So we're looking at those sorts of things, where we can lean into the community. Again, leveraging the network of people makes it a little bit easier, right? Helps on that, going back to that trust variable. Outside of that, I can't say the criteria is all that special as you would look for a seller or high performer. It's more the matches to the culture of our organization and sort of our core principles.
I think cultural fit's always a really important piece, but you mentioned something that's I've always found interesting. I personally always discredit, maybe discredit's the wrong word. Like if somebody was a top performer at Splunk in 2013, I'm kind of like everybody was a top performer at Splunk in 2013, right? Like they're like, oh my goodness, like I crushed it selling Microsoft Windows when it first came out after everybody else was buying it. I'm like, okay, well, like you didn't have to go hunt, right? Like, so those are different things, which kind of gets into you guys filter the candidate, you find somebody who's a good cultural fit, but nobody's perfect. So how do you keep growing them? Like you mentioned the Ritz-Carlton thing, which I think is interesting because I didn't know Ritz-Carlton has a customer success training program available to people, but that kind of makes sense. But like, is it tools? Is it things that you guys have built? Is it programs? Have you cobbled it together? Or is it something you kind of like, you purchased? And like, how do you think about coaching and developing your reps?
Yeah, it's critical, right? Because the ones that receive that sort of continuous support and development, you can see it and you can feel it as an end user, right? And as I sit in the organization as a leader, or even for your peers, right? What existed here before I showed up was this sort of camaraderie where everybody helped one another, right? The company's success was at the forefront of what everyone was doing, above and beyond individual success, which is kind of rare in very rare in a high performance sales culture, right? Usually you get you get the tunnel vision. It's folks that are out to kill for their number. In this case, something that I found really attractive here was this sort of one organizational goal that everybody got behind, and they knew that their individual contributions were helping lead up to that. In the continuous development front, I think the way we're structured really helps with this because we're relatively flat. So that allows myself and other leaders in the company to be really engaged in the field, in the game, with the sellers on a day-to-day basis. You can't provide in-game coaching if you're not on the field, right? You can't, if you're not present, it's really difficult to provide after action. Here's what we could do better, or here's what you're doing really well. We designed the org this way intentionally, right? So that we could keep everybody client facing as much as humanly possible. Because we think it's the only way to effectively, be involved and make the difference that we want to. And I think that's what helps with the continuous sort of development front. The other thing I would say is just the human support, right? It's easy to get lost in a sales environment right into the numbers and just think it's all about performance. It's all about numbers. And the human element goes right out the window really quick. I think we've done a nice job of prioritizing the human element and reminding ourselves, through the great times and through the times where folks are maybe struggling to get to where we know they can be, that we're there to support them because we know, right, we got into this together. We know what the art of the possible is when all things are humming, and we do our best to lead in and help, get everybody to that desirable state.
Makes sense. Makes sense. We talked a little bit at the beginning about the V and VAR and where that's going, right? And we've talked a lot about building trust. As you think about this industry that you sit in, where do you think it's going? How's the model changing? I know you guys just did an acquisition. I thought that was pretty cool. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit. But where do you see the V and VAR going, and how are you guys trying to get ahead of that?
Yeah, like you said, we talked about it a little bit. It's really the evolution of the marketplace as a whole, right? The landscape has evolved dramatically, not just in the past 2 years, but 10 to 15 as well, right? From a tight knit ecosystem of a couple dozen vendors to this expansive network of thousands of OEMs that are the big platform players down to the widgets that no one's even heard of yet coming out of stealth. And the traditional sort of VAR model, I think, got stuck a little bit, right? It aligned very closely with vendors because it was hard to scale against an ecosystem that expanded that quickly and that vastly. And instead of expanding with it, you're aligning to a vendor, you're promoting a solution that fits the portfolio and kind of building services and solutions for sale, right? For people to purchase so that you can grow with this industry. A lot of the times though, those solutions don't align with what the client needs because, custom scares a lot of people. But at the end of the day, most clients, despite size, scale, vertical, like they are very unique, even two that look very much the same, especially in this digital world. Um, you know, that kind of model with those kinds of solutions, in my opinion, it just has compounding effects on the ecosystem, right? That ultimately lead, in some cases or most, to excess spend and let's call it like suboptimal outcomes for end users, right? Compared to what they're shelling out for those solutions. I'd say our approach is a little bit different, right? At the center of our relationship with a client is a piece of proprietary tech called Metrics That Matter. It's a cyber decision platform. It provides a holistic view of the end user's cyber risk posture, their cyber exposure, control effectiveness, utilizing their tech stack and the maturity scale of how well they've implemented it, impact of roadmap initiatives, more and more, right? List goes on. But then there's what we do, right? We fuel our side of the relationship using this centerpiece that we've kind of underpinned the dynamics to with an extensive services portfolio, the resale capabilities, and then we kind of shrink wrap the entire thing with this Ritz-Carlton trained staff and experience, and it provides a pretty unique end-to-end client experience at the end.
So I don't know that I'm going to have an interview where I don't use the word AI somewhere, right? Because it is absolutely fascinating. And then what actually scares me more is quantum, but that's a whole separate conversation. Because I think if you guys saw the stuff from December, we're like 4 years out till the quantum apocalypse, right? Terrifying. But on the AI side related to this, there's always lots of pitfalls, right? There's things that go wrong. What are the ones you see, and how does AI, is AI a thing? Does AI replace relationships? Because, do I have an AI agent that just says, hey, I can negotiate these things for you and get you the best price, and then I don't need a person anymore, right? Like, what is that? What are the risks that you kind of see thinking about like technology and pitfalls of growing the business in this world today?
Yeah, I think, you know much more about this topic than I do, so I'm not going to pretend to be the smart one in this room, but I personally view AI as the enhancer to the experience versus the replacement to the experience. So I think AI is helping maybe identify things that will make a buying experience better if you're the end user, right? That could relate to SLAs, price, contract ceilings, renewal terms, whatever is most important for the long-term relationship with whatever set suppliers in the mix, right? I think from my seat, from the sales seat, it'll probably help enhance the go-to-market experience, the proper triggers, the right kind of alerting for what's going on with your client. And if things are tuned properly, right, you're having this thing really work as your co-pilot, no pun intended there with the AI mix, but truly as a co-pilot or a sidekick versus any sort of replacement. Because I think the human element, again, going back to trust and relationships, I don't know how you replace that with any form of code or LLM.
I agree with you 100%. I think just to throw it out there, right? Until we get like Iron Man Jarvis, where you actually trust Jarvis kind of thing, like until that's there, the human element still becomes super important. I do think that bad sellers or bad VARs are gonna have to, like, if there truly is no V in what they do, which just makes it more, super more important what you guys do. So thanks for that answer.
Yeah, I could see a world where the transactional piece, if that's the value you lean on, that gets automated and squeezed down pretty quickly. Awesome. Okay, well, I think this is a good time to do the roundup. Maybe kind of on the theme of the day, we could all kind of go around, and I would love to just hear a takeaway, maybe a piece of advice for sales leaders or sales reps on kind of that building trust and maybe that connection internally, which is certainly something you think about a lot as a leader. Jonathan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think, as you're scaling any kind of organization, specific from the sales leader point of view, I'd say clearly define that blueprint, that gold image, the person that fits your culture, your company's mission, and defines sort of who you are, right? That's your brand. That's the person that is responsible for the client relationship, the success of the deal, or whatever you want to call it. If they don't represent your brand, it's never going to work. No matter how good the person was at company X or in a prior life, without that, you're going to spin wheels pretty hard. And there are no shortcuts in that game whatsoever. So I would say stick to that blueprint and don't forget about investing and prioritizing the success of your people. You take the human element out of it and you're dead. All right. Keep that at the forefront.
That's great. For me, Brad, I think this conversation kind of like gave me a different definition of what good customer success or a good relationship is. So as John was talking, I'm like, is a good relationship somebody I call when I need something? And I'm like, it could be, but a good relationship is somebody I call when things go bad. And I'm like, oh, I need help with this, right? And everything, John, you were kind of laying out, I'm like, man, if somebody's trained on that and has that ethos, like that's who I want to call when things go bad, right? Who actually cares about me. And not just when I need something, right? And so it's kind of giving me that definition of like, how do you hire sellers and people to be the people that get that call when things are going bad? So that's my takeaway.
I think for me, the thing that I think is lacking, I think there's two things lacking a lot. So I'll kind of take the counterpoint to it, which is I don't think there's enough systems thinking, and I don't think there's enough kind of time horizon thinking past the immediate quarter. And I think those two things are related to each other, right? Like I think that there is this equation out there in the world where people want to feel valued, they want to be invested in, they want to be supported, they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to deliver for their customers, and they want to be enabled to do that. And those are the things that build trust. And trust builds relationships, and relationships get deals, right? And so the pattern I think you see for folks that can't think in those systems is the quarter's coming to an end, or you're looking to pipeline for the next quarter, and the message that gets delivered from sales leadership is something like sell harder, and all the sales reps say, what the hell do you think that I've been doing? It's not that I don't want to sell. It's that the preconditions aren't there, right? And so there's this tension and focus between setting up the preconditions and building the relationships and then doing the things you need to do to get deals over the line and things like that. But I think there's not enough thinking in a lot of sales leadership about those relationships and how that tracks over time, and making sure that those foundational things are there in order to get the outcomes that they want over time. So that's why I was jazzed to have this conversation. So
yeah, this
cool.
is awesome.
Well said.
This is really, really good.
Jonathan, thanks for coming on the show, man. It was great to see you.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a wrap for today, and we will see everyone back here in a couple weeks for more Hack and Hustle.
Thanks.